Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to our first hybrid SAC meeting. And this would be our first attempt at an in-person since before the pandemic, which is before we even had this configuration of the Sustainability Advisory Council. So thank you, those of you who can make it in person, for being here, and for you folks online. I hope this turns out to be at least a reasonable experience for you. I think that technically at this time, wait, how many members do we have here? I guess I have to count for quorum real quick. 1, 2, 4, 5. Oh, we have 8, 9. Am I counting right? Did I count 9? We have a quorum. There's you. And those two. Yeah. Okay. Oh, right, and Taylor's online, and Farron's a new coach. Okay, great. So we're here. My goodness, we have quorum. How wonderful. So thank you all again. So for anyone I know we also have some observers who are not members. Thank you for being here. My name is Grace Raitt. I'm the executive director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, and we are recording today. And so I am the liaison to the Sustainability Advisory Council. And today's meeting, as hot as it is outside, and thank you to Naomi Amaha with the Denver Foundation for hosting us in this very nice, cool room. We appreciate that very much. Today's agenda is not going to be too challenging. For those who may have tuned in for our last meeting in April, it was chock-a-block full of recommendations. We have one today. The other couple agenda items that we have are fairly simple. I'm planning to walk you through our recently released annual report, which has new information and it's all in a new format. Thought that'd be a good opportunity just to walk us through it and take any questions you have, and also thoughts and feedback, especially because it is in a new format for us. And then we have well, wait, did I start with the recommendation? Yes. No, we're going to start with the recommendation. And then we also want to talk about the idea that we've been floating, and I think some of you have been working on, welcome letters for our new mayor. And I'd like to talk about agreeing on a deadline so that we can package those up and get them over to him so that he might be able to utilize them in his first 100 days. Does anybody have any other items you'd wish to add to the agenda? Would it be okay if we start with introductions? Because we do have a couple of new members, people who've been newly appointed to the Sustainability Advisory Council. And if it's okay with everybody online, I'm going to start with the folks in the room. And we're just going to go ahead, go all the way through, but staff people, if you wouldn't mind, let's just go through the members first, and then we can say who's here. So Stephen, I'm going to start over there with you.
So Stephen Shepard, and I am the co-chair of the Building and Homes Subcommittee. And I am the Executive Vice President, Chief Staff Officer for the Building Owners and Managers Association.
I'm Aaron Martinez. I'm the other co-chair of the Buildings and Homes Subcommittee. And I am the COO at Urban Land Conservancy.
I'm Anna McDevitt. I'm on our energy subcommittee, and I'm here representing Sierra Club as the Southwest Deputy Director of our Beyond Coordinating Team.
And I am Harmony Cummings, the new co-chair of the EJ committee, and I'm the founder of the Greenhouse Connection Center in Elyria.
I'm Paul Cashman. I represent South Denver District 6 and Denver City Council.
And you are the council
I
representative.
am the council
appointee.
representative to the South.
Thank you.
I'm Stuart Anderson, and I co-chair with Naomi the Transportation Committee. And my day job is Executive Director of Transportation Solutions. We're a transportation management association serving Southeast Denver.
Good afternoon and welcome to Casa Grande. I'm Naomi Amaha. I co-chair the Sustainable Transportation Committee with Stuart, and I work for the foundation as our Director of Policy and Government Affairs.
And I'm looking over Taylor's shoulder. I think Taylor, can you call on the people who are members? Who are online? We've got Taylor Ryman. There we go. Taylor and Theron. That's it. Okay. How about Taylor first, then Theron?
Hi, everyone. Taylor Ryman. I am the co-chair with Lori Matthews on the Zero Waste Committee. And in my daytime job, I am assistant to city council for the city of Boulder. Lori's not able to make it today, but she sends her regards.
And over to you, Theron.
Hello, I'm Theron Makeley. I'm the new co-chair along with Anna on the energy subcommittee. In the daytime, I work at a company that's focused on green energy. We make semiconductors for green energy. The name is Infineon. And excuse my background, I had a family Zoom this week and our theme was cows. And so I still have my cow in the background of my theme. So I'll have to be careful with this new format.
Darren, I like that you have the flower in your background. It's like you're the center of it, and I think that looks lovely. Taylor, do we have any other members that are online right now?
Not that I.
Okay, we do have some staff members here, and I think especially for the benefit of those who are new, although frankly, what I love is all of you who are new members have been on our committees for a while. But let's just go ahead quickly and review again, first who's in the room, and then we'll go to the folks online. Katrina, starting with you.
Katrina Madigan, Director of Buildings and Homes. Hi, everybody. Liz Babcock, Deputy Director.
Oh, that's me. Grace Ring, I already introduced myself.
Taylor Mullers, I'm on our engagement team.
And now Taylor, you're gonna have to call on who's online.
And online, I can see Samantha. Maybe,
And how about, I see Corey and Brad.
there you go. We can call on Corey.
Hey everybody, Corey Manning, engagement coordinator on the comms and engagement team.
Brad.
All right, Brad.
Hey everyone, Brad Patterson on Adaptation and Resiliency Committee.
And then I see Mac.
Mhm.
Hello everyone, Mac Prather here. Working on Casser residential electrification, just joining and listening in.
And then Samantha, Sam.
Hi there, Samantha Licton, also with the electrification group, working on trade and industry relations as well as regulatory affairs.
All right, well, thanks again to everybody for being here. And now, and also thank you for your patience, everybody online and in the room with our hybrid structure here. Taylor, I'm gonna ask if you could go to that Google Doc to bring up the Buildings and Homes Committee's recommendation. And Buildings and Homes, if you're ready, I'm gonna hand it over to you to talk us through this recommendation. Is that all right?
Perfect.
Okay, so now it's on the screen for folks to see. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read this, but Stephen, I'm gonna turn the whole thing over to you and walk us through it.
So this recommendation got put on hold for our last meeting because CPD was already starting to work on some minor changes and adjustments to the green building ordinance, which was passed in 2018 as a result of a green roof initiative that had been passed by the voters that turned out not to be implementable in the way that it had been set up. And so as we've been trying to go through our committee, if you all recall, one of the last recommendation that our committee did with the Zoning Environmental Committee was to ask the city for Kaiser to push that the city would start working on creating a resilient green and water plan. So that landscaping and water use reduction and those types of things would become part of the overall arching code, not only just code for what happens with construction, but also how the city manages parks and rec and grow and all those other things, right? So the reason why it was important to remind you of that is this kind of plays off of that a little bit as to why we're recommending this piece, because the green building ordinance, what we're asking is that we think that existing buildings should be removed from the green building ordinance because it's not working in the way that it was originally intended, in that especially now with Energized Denver, but even before that, existing buildings were selecting the energy reduction program as their option for when they replace their roof. So if you think about it, you have an existing property, you can't just create green space, right? So because some of those other options were not feasible, the energy reduction piece was feasible, and we see it becoming now with Energized Denver. That's going to become the norm. And so in order to make sure that there's not confusion between these two programs, which, I mean, I represent, the commercial building space, and that's one of the biggest questions we're already getting, do they have to do this on top of that and all of these other things? And so there's just confusion around that. And I think if, you know, now with green building code and the energy code and all those other things kind of going into regular code, that the green building ordinance from the existing building point or existing building point of view is kind of past its service or usefulness, I guess, for lack of a better word. We had talked about new properties. And the reason why we did not bring that forward was because we felt like that until the city had worked on kind of that sustainable green and water code, that keeping that in for new construction, which obviously it's much easier to incorporate when you're designing a building from scratch, those needs and requirements. So that's why we're putting this forth. We know with the new administration coming on board, it's not going to be something that's going to happen like in the next probably even 6 months, if then. But we just want to make sure we do want to go ahead as a committee. At our meeting yesterday, decided we should go ahead and put it through. And then hopefully it's something that can start being incorporated in the planning, especially, you know, if there's some other review of codes that happens, maybe it's very easy to kind of blend this in and make it all work together. So like if we had had this before the last round of green building ordinance review, could, you know, they have taken that into account when they redid the tweaks and worked it in them, but we were kind of overlapping each other. So the Building and Homes Subcommittee is requesting that the council approve that Kaiser work on figuring out how we can work with CPD to take existing buildings from the green building ordinance. So.
Do either of you want to add anything? Katrina, do you want to add any color commentary?
No, I don't think so. Is everyone familiar with the green building ordinance? That might be.
I mean, almost 70% of the people that have had the, you know, abide by the code ordinance have chosen the path of the energy. So.
But would a short review of the green building ordinance?
That'd be helpful to help you out.
Sure. So the voters passed the green roof ordinance, which was just not workable for a number of reasons. So we revised it after a whole long process to be the green building ordinance. And the requirements layer on top of other codes. So for new buildings, there's a bunch of compliance options in addition to following the base building code. And there are green space options and energy options. For existing buildings, it's when you replace your roof, because that was the trigger in the original green roof ordinance. So when someone replaces their roof, they have to either add green space or do some energy options. And nearly 70% of the buildings are picking the energy option today because that's what's more feasible in existing buildings. And so the energy options for existing buildings in the green building ordinance today are much less stringent than our Energized Denver performance requirements. And so that's why the committee recommended just sort of streamlining our regulations, because this is something everyone has to sort of check that they're in compliance with today, but most buildings will already have to do far more than the green building ordinance under the Energized Denver performance requirements. And so this is just a streamline our regulations recommendation, the committee and for existing buildings. That's helpful. That's a question. Yeah. So you said a couple of times it's streamlining. So this is a regulatory certainty pathway thing, not like there's no functional policy change to what the buildings would need to do. It's just streamlining. I mean, there might be so right now, existing buildings, when they replace their roof, can pick a compliance option. They could add green space to their site. Right. But most of them aren't picking that out. Also, the amount of green space is really minuscule for just the way the regulation was structured for existing buildings. Most are all doing the energy at 70%, and then there were another 12% that are paying the fee in lieu of compliance. And that was never the goal of the green building ordinance. So this would just be Kaiser work to, so it would be getting rid of some of those other compliance options, but roof replacement is also very awkward. I think that's the other thing the committee discussed. What I heard is roof replacement is a very awkward time to regulate green space or energy performance in buildings, and since Energize Denver has done something so much more ambitious on performance, the committee has felt like this, we wouldn't really lose that.
Well, and they have to replace with a cool roof.
They would still have to
Anyway.
replace with a
Okay.
cool roof.
Right,
You would
so
keep
that's
the cool
not-
roof benefit, exactly.
We just, if there be clarity about the more stringent energized.
There wouldn't be these extra requirements when you replace your roof. You put on your cool roof and you would be done, and then you would also, if you're over 25,000 square feet, which is the same size threshold as the green building residents, have to meet the energy
Energized, yeah, okay.
performance requirements.
Is anybody building green roofs?
I
Are
Some
we getting
new
any?
buildings are.
Yeah,
It's
Oh,
pretty
okay.
rare that green roofs can be put on an existing
Right,
structure because of the weight.
and then the
but
other,
new buildings, what percentage of new buildings would you say are taking that option?
I don't know that I've seen like a poll,
In our
It's in our
annual
annual
report,
is it? Okay.
is it part of your presentation? I'll pull it up, to find out exactly how much was built.
The other
You're
challenge,
not- You're not proposing any change to.
No change though to
No
the
change.
buildings.
Right, right,
And to my knowledge, no existing buildings have built a green roof. They've occasionally, I think there
green space.
have been a total of, I can give you the total. A total of 9 projects
Oh, that's
over the
weird.
4 years that have added with a very small amount of green space required.
the other part with green roofs that a lot of people didn't think about, I don't think, was the water. When you have roofs higher in the air, right, and the wind is drying them out faster, that's the whole water thing, which is part of the reason why we talked about why we added water to the green resilient piece that y'all passed a couple meetings ago. Was because water needs to be taken into account when we're thinking of these things, because, that's a precious resource, and so some of those green roofs require a lot more water than people realize they do.
Yeah, I was in Vancouver recently, and they've got a lot of water close by.
Yeah,
So they have rooftop plantings that blew me away.
it was.
Or
wonderful.
humidity in the air,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, there's all those kinds of things that we don't have here.
Right, right.
I work for a real estate developer and he said one of the biggest issues is that you couldn't find people who have the plans in order. Like, so I think that it'd be really helpful if we had a couple of vendors or suppliers who are aware of the compliance and already ready to go, who can help the people who want to do these things be able to achieve them. And they also said significantly permitting issues continue to have people take other courses and try these avenues. And I hear that over and over and over again in every aspect, including my own personal issues trying to get solar and windows.
There's a question in the chat from Theron for the other 30%, what is being chosen?
Yep, so 3% choose to follow third-party rating system certifications such as LEED. 8% comply using on-site renewables. And in those 2 cases, those are probably systems, my guess, are these systems that are already in place, because both of those take a while, and when you need a roof, that's the other challenge with roof replacement, is that when you need a roof, you probably need it quickly. So my guess is that those are buildings that were already LEED certified or already had solar, and they just put it back on their roof. 10%, those 9 projects did add green space, but remember that was over the 4 years, most of which was before Energize Denver
Gotcha.
made it so that all the buildings have already met the energy requirement. 12% paid the fee in lieu, and the 66%, we said nearly 70, they chose the energy program. over those
Are
4
we
years.
still comfortable that on new buildings, it makes sense to put in green roofs if that's it?
The ordinance doesn't require green roof,
Right, I know, that.
just green space, yeah.
Right, but I mean, hearing what you're talking about winds up high, drying it out, I mean, what is the wisdom at this point? Do green roofs make sense in Denver? What's Cassier's view?
I think that's one of the questions we should ask and look into when we take up as the city, the work to develop a resilient Denver program with the following all the landscape and water scarcity recommendations of this committee. And rightly, I think that we can do the goal of that recommendation is to do so much more for having good resilient water, conserving green space in our city. And so I think we should, I don't think we have an answer today. I want to have the right process to come up with like is a resilient landscape for Denver. which is what you all have recommended in the last
Right.
meeting.
I have a question on the threshold for existing. It was originally triggered by a new roof. And now you're removing that. So would I'm literally thinking of a project where there's refurbishing of existing buildings and new buildings coming in. And it's the old Sears site in Cherry Creek that's going to be redone. 3 buildings are going to be existing. How would that apply here? Does the whole property fall into this, in this set of requirements for the existing buildings?
Only if they're replacing the roof.
Only if replacing the roof, okay.
And then one of the changes that they made, that now hail damage, which was a exemption, thank you. Sorry, my brain has been somewhere else today, and I apologize, but with some family stuff. So I think that part of it, there's gonna be some of those kinds of things that will, I think, speed up that transition of getting more cool roofs in. But I can tell you, most of my members, if they're gonna spend money to replace the roof, they're doing it for cool. I mean, it makes total sense. From a business perspective as well as for sustainability.
Can you give more information on what a cool roof is? That's a new concept to me.
So what a cool roof does is it basically, when you think about roofs of the past, and I don't know, Rich, you may be more experienced in this. It's
It's basically a reflective roof instead of a dark roof.
Makes so much
So
sense.
it absorbs the energy to where it, doesn't keep your inside, especially your attic space, as cool as it would a cool roof reflecting the heat off of it.
Yeah, in terms of like the urban heat island effect, a cool roof would be a reflective surface. So it's unlike a black tar roof or a dark shingle roof or even a stone covered roof. There's a lot of that in commercial buildings. And so, yeah, rather than retaining heat, which is worse for the building than also for the heat island effect, it would instead be reflective.
Even some places have, depending on what kind of material is on their roof, if it was a dark, just painting it white has changed.
Yeah, special roofing
Sometimes,
paint, not
yeah.
just your average
Right.
household. Good. Do we have any other questions online?
I can answer, sorry, go ahead.
There's some
Yeah.
comment.
Go ahead, sorry.
There's one question from Austin at Denver Water in regards to the green space piece of it. Will Dottie be involved in any landscape ordinance?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will, and we've already started the conversations with Dottie and CPD and Parks, because landscape is regulated by a number of different departments, so we need to come together on one plan for how we deliver a resilient landscape across kind of all the different pieces where that's regulated. So absolutely, Austin.
What stage of discussion are you? I mean, how early are you ready to write an ordinance? Is that a year away, 5 years away?
We're getting aligned on the goal.
Okay, so you're early in the discussion.
But we are early, we have all the right people talking, and then we need to map out the whole process. I think that there'll be a lot of elements to it, though, that we need to have come together that are programmatic. So there's the code changes, but there's also the programs and the incentives, and there's the way we just manage our own land, and it all just needs to come together into one resilient landscape.
Yeah, I would say that the important piece is to make sure that we are actually going to get the outcomes we want from the policy process. So I've heard Aurora's turf policy mentioned before, right? But what we don't want to happen is for turf to be banned without an alternative replacement to turf, because then we will increase our heat island. We will not have the other benefits of native vegetation like biodiversity or stormwater management. And so we want a really thoughtful process. So it is hard to answer your question because the process will take the time that it takes to kind of get to those conclusions, but I think it's a top priority.
Yeah, I get it. I would describe it as early in the process. You're
right.
not putting dots over the i's and crossing
Correct.
the t's. Because my office has been visiting Greeley and Castle Rock, and we'll talk about it offline, but the differences in the way different municipalities are approaching it is stunning.
Exactly.
The only other thing I might add is that we want to make sure we have the right process for the landscape, but also that we have the right process from an equity perspective, and that we make sure that as we kind of roll out the policies and codes for the transition, that we have the incentives and the support to make sure that that good resilient landscape is delivered to our most resource community first, so.
Keep my number close by, please.
Process and design.
Could I just add, for those listening online, and of course for our new members who probably know this, I just wanted to add why, just to pre-answer the question, why is it important for the SAC to weigh in on this? When this is clearly a bit of, there's a long process ahead to actually make this come to fruition. And that my colleagues will chime in if they think I haven't captured it completely, but when we go to the table with other stakeholders, whether it's, first our colleagues in other agencies and then with their stakeholders as well. When we're able to say the Sustainability Advisory Council has explored this issue and here's what their opinion is, that matters when we're at the table. And so I think that's why it's very valuable for you to weigh in on this. We record your recommendations, we take that to these partner conversations, and it really does matter. So I just wanted to add that in case anybody wonders, well, why are we weighing in on something that's not gonna happen for 6 months or more?
Well, and I think the other part of it that I think was very important, and part of the reason why two committees came together is there's a lot of touch points in this, right? I mean, not just with city, but when you start thinking about stakeholders and how do you start encouraging people with their own personal yards to make changes that are gonna better affect us as far as the community and what should be planted, what is recommended. We heard what in one of the, there's like 2 or 3 soil zones in Denver. So each one of those soil zones can be different plants or require different types of conversations. And so it's not gonna be an easy path to get not only the city's piece, but then it's the right of way and all the trees and grass and all that. And then it's what do we start encouraging the citizens to be doing at there. So it's a huge undertaking. And I don't know that anybody else would have thought of convening the city stakeholder groups together if Kaiser wasn't doing that. So that was why we pushed for it. But.
Great, thank you. So, go ahead.
Just answer the councilman's question on green roofs. I just pulled up our annual report. There have been 35,000 square feet of vegetated roofs installed and 81,000 square feet of at-grade green space installed. Most of that in the new buildings, right? But just answering kind of an aggregate, what is that? What is the green building ordinance doing? And all of the vegetated roofs are on the new buildings.
So 35,000 square feet is about 5 regular Denver residential lots, not a heck of a lot.
Yeah, and that's total across new buildings.
Yeah, thank you.
Green roof.
Thanks.
And I would kind of almost wonder if some of those were some of the newer boutique hotels or things like that,
We're doing it anyway.
We're putting gardens on the roof anyway, and nice patios, I'm sure. At least they're hard.
Right, Theron does have his hand up and is
Okay.
unmuted if you have a question, Theron.
Yeah, a comment and a question. As far as the cool roofs, there's a climate benefit to those too, because they reflect the solar radiation back before it turns into infrared radiation. Infrared is the one that gets trapped under the ozone layer and causes climate warming. So there's a benefit to getting people to switch to cool roofs faster. I would encourage you to educate the community on that benefit and see if we can't get people to switch to these before they need a new roof. Get people to do the right thing without having it to be a legislative reason to switch. So I think that's another pathway to choose. And then are we doing anything about residential rooftops too? Because we still see a lot of brown and black shingles being put on homes. And that could benefit by going to some of the newer reflective or cool shingle type technologies.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at Katrina because I feel like you are our resident expert on building code in general. We don't have any like reflective minimums or maximums in our residential code?
We don't, and I don't. It's been a minute since I really dove in on cool roofs leading the green roof, the green roof building ordinance process 5 years ago. And so I'm trying to dig the details, and Sarah and I can follow up with you directly on residential cool roofs. I don't think that's really a product line, because they're seen and that white can be like offsetting to the eyes. Like the cool roofs are on commercial buildings, you don't see because they're up high. And so there's also just like, but I can dig in and send you some of what I know I have in my files on residential cool roofs. I don't think that's as much of a thing. Okay.
Yeah, I understand that too. But I think we have to start questioning some of the existing opinions of people and saying, look, this climate issue is more important than your house looking good, right? So we really have to push those limits with people and get them to understand there's different reasons to have an urgency here.
Yeah, I'll follow up and dig in on the latest. I'm not sure it's actually a product today, but perhaps it is. But my recollection is it wasn't real.
Something could have happened.
Yeah, right. And I think there are other cities that have done that. Even with shingles, there can be lighter, they're just like lighter colored shingles. So there's a spectrum that is allowed and it's more limited.
And it's reflectivity more than just like being white. And
Right.
so you might be able to have medium colors that are just higher, right? Like that, the cool roof requirements are all written in terms of reflectivity of different roofing materials. And so,
Yeah, I think I heard Theron say two things, right? So one is like, it's critical that we start thinking about other creative climate mitigation solutions. And so there is a whole field of research right now that's looking at creating like the whitest paint possible that will actually, that if we cover enough of the earth's surface with those reflective paint or other reflective materials, that we can actually stop heating, even if we're continuing to add more carbon into the atmosphere. So it's a mitigation and adaptation and resilience strategy, but where that's located and how it's appropriate. And then there is a spectrum, like Grace was saying. So certain cities piloted painting their streets with this white paint. And it's exactly what Katrina was saying. I don't think you were saying like the aesthetic of the house, that more that it's blinding to have like something that's extremely bright white reflecting the sun up at the human level. And so they actually did not pursue going beyond the initial pilot with that white surface coating because it was too bright for the eyes. But then they've now been developing other coatings that are not as reflective and harmful to the eyes, but can still be somewhat more reflective to create cooling. So figuring out how and where we incorporate those resilient strategies to reduce heat island, and then also doing the mitigation piece of it, is a really important strategy for how we do kind of land use and planning and thinking about, the quality of life and human experience within the city. So
the last thing I'll quickly say about our committee is that we have had conversations that we need to let the commercial stuff work its way through the goals and see what, the Energized Denver ordinance and the new codes and all of that. We need to let that work. And so our focus is gonna be now is what can we do with the home side of the building and homes subcommittee that can start making some recommendations on that side.
So, I mean, it's a great robust discussion, and I'm sure because of who we are, we could talk about this until 5 and not talk about anything else. But I don't think there's any other comments in the chat unless anybody wants to raise a hand. Would anyone like to motion to approve? And second?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you.
Yeah, second.
And second, all right. All those in favor of sending this to CASR for further examination and sharing with our colleagues in other agencies? We just do a voice vote. Aye. And you folks online, yes, Marianne's typing in aye. Thank you very much.
Aye.
Theron and Taylor, thank you. Yes, your voice vote's just fine. Theron, did we get you? Got a thumbs up. All right, we'll take the thumbs up. Great, thanks everybody. And thank you Buildings and Homes for working on that and giving that great study. And now off to the Buildings and Homes team for that. All right, Taylor, I think you can take that one down. And if it's all right, I think what I'll do is what I thought I would do for reviewing our annual report is just to actually bring it up online here on your screen and walk through it without trying to be too boring. And because nobody wants to be read to. But for the folks in the room, and then maybe if we can, Taylor, I don't know if you can see the people online, could we just get a show of hands to see how many people have taken a look at it yet? Taking a look? Yes, okay, well, that's okay, and if there's no, it's okay, it's not a test. If you did not read it or look at it yet, that's okay, great. So how about if I'll just take, especially because we have some folks visiting online, I will walk through it, especially so that everybody knows how to navigate it. And then I will try to spend no more than 10 minutes doing that and talking at you. And then we can take some questions, and I'm especially interested in your comments about this format. So before I begin, I'll discuss that a little bit. This is our second annual report. The origin for this is the Climate Protection Fund ordinance requires that we submit to you an annual report on our expenditures for the prior year. We decided last year with our first report that we should actually make it a report on our whole agency, because of course, the Climate Protection Fund does leave out a couple of the other areas of work that we do. And we thought, well, why would we publish a report that doesn't tell about everything that we do? So we did that. So last year, we had a very traditional PDF was the final product. And that's, you know, what we're all accustomed to, especially from government agencies. One of the biggest challenges with that, though, is that it needs to be translated into multiple languages in order for our whole community to appreciate and enjoy. And we now have, the city of Denver now has a language access requirement that really states that, or mandates that we as agencies have to make our materials available in at least, I believe is it 12 languages? There's a minimum of 12 languages. So when we, by publishing this as a story map, which is what this tool is online, people who speak languages other than English can actually set their browser to their preferred language, and it translates everything on the page. And so we think from an accessibility perspective, for language accessibility, this is better. There are also ADA requirements for how visual materials are presented. And again, this story map format meets those requirements and is better for people who are visually impaired. So we went with this, and I will say so those are the requirements that we wanted to meet. But I would also say that from a procedural perspective for us, and we're still figuring this out, but we were making changes up until I hit send when I sent it to you. So that was actually very helpful, because previously we had to complete all of our content a full 6 weeks before publishing, and that was really challenging. So we were able to tweak things. Lastly, as we go through this, you'll see that we have embedded our data. It's called a Power BI dashboard. That's just happens to be the software that the city uses. And we're able to, hopefully this means that we're able to share much more information with you and with the public. And I think especially when we get down to the budget table, you can actually see every single contract that we have initiated under the Climate Protection Fund. And I think that that's a very high level of transparency for a city agency that you can, so the public can actually explore, you know, where is this money going and what are the projects that are being funded. All right, I see there's 2 questions or 2 comments in the chat. Is that anything I need to cover before we move on?
No.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and scroll down. So Taylor, let's stop on the tabs just so we can do a little navigation. So if you could just move the cursor, see how, all right, so everybody can see how it says agency overview is underlined. Each of those are basically chapter headings. And so you can go and click on any one of those and it'll jump you down to that next section. And if you look all the way over to the right, there's an arrow, because we have so many chapters, they don't all fit on the, I guess it's a ribbon up there. And everyone's going to forgive me for not having the right technological words for this. So again, so agency overview, pretty simple. We always have to be aware that people who visit this site may not know who we are and know what we do. So we start with that. You can go ahead down. Yeah, keep going. Okay, this is our first, the major data that our agency is judged by and that we always are tracking and we want to share are the reductions in emissions from our greenhouse gas inventory in Denver. We are always trying different types of visualizations on this. And so again, I'm not going to try to read exactly what it is, but basically the different colors correspond to different emission sources. And it is showing you the downward trend over time, which is good. Through 2021, which is our last available year, the new data will be for 2022 will be updated in September, and we will get that out to all of you. That'll be shared on our website. Scrolling. So description of our outreach and engagement, you see that you are first, our Sustainable Advisory Council. We think that obviously public engagement is very, very important to us and to our work. So Taylor, you can continue scrolling. Basically, what this section has is descriptions on all of our different programs that are operated by our communications and engagement team. A lot of data there on and here personal stories from Certifiably Green Denver. And hopefully, yeah, the scrolling works, which is great. We've got videos embedded in here, which has been terrific. We've had some nice media attention to our programs. Great. All right, workforce development is our next category. We've had a lot of great, really great success with this program and really terrific personal stories of individuals who have been enrolled in our green workforce programs. People who had significant barriers to full-time employment, who have found full-time employment at really good rates of pay, like family sustaining wages that they never had access to before. And so we're very excited to share information about that. That dashboard there has a lot of data on, who are in the programs, what are the type of programs that they're enrolled in. And interesting, what are the hurdles to employment that they have faced that they are self-reporting. So we're collecting a lot of different types of data. And as we go through here, and hopefully with the questions that you ask, you'll see that we're collecting a lot of different types of data, and we're actually interested in what is it that you as the public want to hear? What do you want to know from us? So that if we're not collecting something, we can work on that, or maybe we have the data and we just didn't share it. Go ahead on. Taylor's working on it. Sorry, we have Taylor has a lot of jobs today.
There's so many screens.
Renewables has been terrific. And if you have not been to, I know Montbello Rec Center, Harvard Gulch are both under construction already. And I believe that Central Park has already broken ground. I'm looking at Liz. Off the top of your head.
Well, Harvard Gulch, let's see, where did I go? I was just at Harvard Gulch. Yeah.
Is it done? Or just about done? So basically our first,
So the park in Montbello order.
Yeah, the first of our community solar arrays that are on city property are almost at completion, like almost at the point of being turned on and electrified. And it is really exciting. So I go to the Montbello Rec Center a lot. It is the entire parking lot has now been covered in solar panels.
That's
and
great.
So
Yeah.
just talking about reflectivity and creating shade for the cars that are there, in addition to the energy that goes to the building. And then this, this program as community solar, the city buildings are only allowed to be, consume up to 40% of the power as the anchor subscribers. And the rest of the power is being provided to Denver Housing Authority to help bring down their utility usage so they can provide more services to their residents. And then also to individual household subscribers who are low-income households that will come to this program through, or get access to this program through Denver Public Schools. That's sort of a one-stop shop for them to find all sorts of different resources that can help bring down the cost for their households. So there's just a lot of really great things, a lot of really great stories coming out of that program. So here we've got one of our first maps. This is the Denver Solar Co-op. And what this is showing you are the general locations, not an actual address, right? We don't need people to go find your home here. But these are the general locations of all the households that were in the 2022 solar co-op. And you're going to see this grow over time so that hopefully we'll have circles, all over the city to show the reach of the solar co-op. So I think there's actually a number of maps here, aren't there, Taylor? Yep. And then we have are these renewable energy programs? Or these rebates? So this is a rebate program. So again, more maps. And every year this is going to grow. There will be more dots on the map. Renewables and resilience. Oh, this is with our, these are nonprofit organizations that are receiving funds to place solar on their roofs or electric vehicle charging stations at their facilities. And also battery storage, if that is a good solution for their site. So this is new for us. We did not have maps like this in our previous versions. Solar outdoor learning with Denver Public Schools. And more videos, which is great. You can just keep going. Lots of scrolling. Okay. All right, adaptation and resiliency. I think let's go down and see what that map has for us. Oh, of course. So this is, obviously we want to understand where are heat vulnerable neighborhoods And then as we scroll down, you'll see stories about our community tree planting initiative, which is just growing and growing. And we have, we're really looking forward to getting more money put into that program. And what's really great about the funds from the Climate Protection Fund is that we're allowed to fund the planting of trees on private property. And so these trees are going into people's yards. So they get to have them, they take care of them. We actually pay for 3 years of maintenance to help make sure that the tree survives. But this is so different than just the city walking into a community and saying, here we are, here's some trees, and then we plant them in the parkway. And it's fully disconnected from, you know, what actually the people want. And so I just think that this program has a really great story to tell. And I think this one's going to continue to grow. And really excited to have, you know, more pictures of happy people with their trees. Liz, do you mind if I turn it over to you to speak about, you can go through the, go down to the funds. Taylor, could I have you speak about the small grants that we were able to give out in 2022 for environmental justice programs?
Yeah, so one of the programs is under the environmental justice allowable use is a environmental justice support fund. And so we piloted that last year. We provided $10,000 purchase orders with multiple organizations to do community outreach, education, training around environmental justice topics with a particular focus on air pollution and ways that the city and or state can advance policy or regulation to better protect communities from impacts of pollution in our environmental justice neighborhoods. So you can see there the list: Cultivando, Denver's NAACP Environmental Justice Committee, 350 Colorado, the Greenhouse Connection Center, Light of Day LLC, Black Parents United Foundation, Climate Movement Co., and Women from the Mountain and UCAN, which works in Globeville and GS. So those organizations have hosted community events, they've hosted trainings, and some of them are still working through and developing kind of a strategy for how to engage in some of the upcoming rulemakings that are happening at the state to try to get the community to have more awareness about how they can be involved and participate in that process and advocate for stronger regulation and protection. So this is just the initial pilot, and so we're really hoping to scale that up significantly along with the recommendations that have been coming out of the EJ committee to fund more training and environmental justice capacity building in the community.
Great, thank you for that. All right, we're getting there. Sustainable transportation. It's at first I want to say, well, it's e-bikes, but actually there's a little bit more than e-bikes, but it certainly has been our marquee program this year. And especially, you know, we began it in 2022. It just took us by storm. We did not know how popular it would be at this point. So this report, I should have mentioned this. The way we've done these annual reports so far is it is a true look back at what happened from January 1 to December 31 of the prior year. So the number that you see here, just over 4,700 residents purchased e-bikes through our program, that has already been eclipsed. We're already over 6,000 at this point. But this is the tally of what we had in all of last year. Taylor, are you actually able to do the side by side? I don't know how you call that, scrolling. This chart here, or this map, when you scroll it, can you bring up the key? It's in the bottom left corner. That. So what this map shows you is in the blue, it shows you the distribution of the e-bike, of the income qualified e-bike rebates. And when you scroll back and it's in the reddish tone, you see the distribution of the standard value e-bike rebates. So it's an interesting point, right, of information. Where is the distribution? Where is it strongest? Where do we need to focus in the future? Yeah. And also find out, it's not so much just like who may or may not be finding out about it. I think there's a lot more factors at play, right? Are the people in the neighborhoods that have lower uptake of our vouchers, are they less inclined to bike for physical environmental reasons, right? Are there bike lanes? Are there bike paths? Are there safe streets? So this could actually be really important and useful information for our colleagues in the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure when they look at what kind of infrastructure do we need to make biking, walking, rolling truly equitable throughout the city so that everyone can and wants to take advantage of our program. So again, interesting for us to be utilizing maps, which we have not in the past. We got some really good data here on sustainable transportation. Keep moving on. More maps. We've helped fund what is now called the Denver connector. It started as the Montbello connector. It has expanded into the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea neighborhood this year, and who knows where it'll go next. But when our funds pay for the all electric vehicle that is in the fleet. More videos, which is great. E-bike libraries.
I also heard today that they've had a total of 100,000 trips on the connector.
Oh, really?
Yeah, as you know,
That's
yeah, they
excellent.
told me this morning.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah.
I talked to a colleague in GES and she said they're using it a lot, really happy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
A firm for GES, especially for teenagers and people with disabilities.
Oh, that's great.
And then like, so parents don't have to take their kids to soccer practice.
Yeah.
They call it's really helping people in a number of ways.
Yeah.
I love stories like that. I
Yeah.
want to get more of those. That's terrific. All right, thanks, Taylor. Keep scrolling. Yeah, because I think I'm running up against the time period if I haven't already eclipsed it. Well, of course, data, but Katrina and her buildings and homes team are so full of data. They have so much data, which is terrific. Let's go down to the dashboard. It's definitely one that's worth poking around, really starting to look at, what is the carbon benefit per dollar spent. This is something that I'll want to go through this in our discussion. Something that we're still struggling with, right, is I showed you earlier at the beginning of the report, the major KPI for us is what's the city's total greenhouse gas emissions inventory and how's it going down over time? But people also really want to know, well, you've spent X dollars, how much, have you reduced emissions based on that? And of course, these are programs that are in process. It's year over year. Are we really going to see that kind of incremental progress one at a time? So it's challenging, but I think I commend Katrina's team for really trying to take a look at that type of metric and break it down and say, how do we make this, accessible to the lay public looking at it? All right, let's just quickly go. I think we must be nearing the end there.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. And more videos. It's just terrific. Yeah. Great descriptions of our program.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, get down to the budget. So everyone, I just want to make sure people know how to navigate that. And then we can take conversation. Oh, I'm sorry, now I'm skipping over zero waste, which is too bad, but more good videos, obviously description of the bag fee and of course our work on waste no more. But here's where you want to go, to the money. And I want to make sure you know how to navigate this. So Taylor, if you can hang out here for just a bit. So when you look here, what you see on the left side, so the far left column, you're going to see these are all of our programs. And if you click on one that has a plus sign, Taylor. Yeah, there's a good one. Although I can't really see from here. But when you click on the plus sign, you actually get to go through and see all the different vendors contractors that we're working with to implement these programs. And when you look across, what you'll see is, what we're mandated to report, which is the 2022 actuals. That's what this annual report is required to do, is show you exactly how much was expended in that particular year. But what we also want to show you is what's the total budget for that particular project, because all of our contracts for these projects are 3 or sometimes 5 years. So what's the total that's been budgeted for that program? Then we have each of the allowable uses. You're all familiar with this. There is rarely going to be a program that is only renewables or only environmental justice or only adaptation, right? So we take great care and we actually have written memos for our staff, by our staff, describing, well, why have we decided to allocate 25% in adaptation and 75% in buildings? We have all these, we've memorialized all of that logic, and then we show it to you here. And then along with what the percentage towards that equity mandate, which is that at least 50% of the fund needs to be directed for the benefit of the people and communities most harmed by climate change impacts. So all of that is here. It's a lot to look at, but whenever you want to go through it, it's there for you. And again, I think as a government agency, we are proud to have provided this level of transparency. We have nothing to hide. We want you to see it. We want you to go through it, and we want you to ask questions. And so what follows from here are more charts Everybody loves charts, like pie charts. And Taylor, if you could go down to the pie charts real quick or over to them. I do want to explain one, and then I promise I will stop talking. I think it goes, if you just go to the two, the second tab. Will that get us there?
Oh.
There we go. So if you look at the one that says it's the one on the right, CPF total funding. I think one of my takeaways is I think I need to add another explainer for what this is. The total funding 21 to 25 comes from our annual, I'm sorry, for the 5-year plan. So in the 5-year plan, we made an assumption that this tax would raise about $40 million per year for 5 years. So that the total circle is $200 million. What we're showing you here is of that $200 million, we have committed 68%, so almost 70% of it through the contracts that we already have that are in that table. So if it's a contract in hand, or there was an RFP underway by December 31st of last year, we consider that committed. Because of course, as a government agency, you have to have the money in hand before you can go out to contract. So that means that we have actually committed more money than we have collected. But we can do that because again, these are contracts that are 3 or 5 years, and we know that money will continue coming in. So I think that we need to have more words here to describe this for people who are just looking at it, because I think otherwise people look at it and see, oh, you have $200 million and you're sitting on 62 of it, you haven't spent. That's not the case. That is future money that we believe is going to come in, and we haven't committed that money yet. Wait, can I just finish and then totally open up first? All right, Councilman Cashman is asked that I finish. We are at the end and we will go to him for the first question. Thank you for your patience.
Do we have any kind of a prudent reserve in the climate fund that you don't go below?
I would say my answer to that is no. We don't have a mandated reserve, and we have not talked about like, oh, we're always going to keep 5% in the pot and not touch it. Can you expand on maybe why that might be a good idea?
Just with, like you say, the money is going to be coming in. Yes and no.
Right.
I mean, the city knows its money is coming in, and we have a couple of different reserve accounts. I always tell people, numbers are not me. I'm not the guy to turn to as an economist, but I'm familiar with the principle and just thought I'd throw it out.
I think the difference here is no operations are funded from this, right? This is all programming.
Not our operations, but perhaps a good question is like, what if there were run up in costs of some of our vendors and we needed additional funding to say adjust for inflation or increased material costs? And if we committed everything.
Yeah, I mean,
I
so
know we do have staff.
organizationally, you want reserves for, when things money doesn't come in, but this isn't that. This is.
We do have staff funded out of it though.
How
well,
much of
then,
the staff
there you
is funded out of it?
How much, the question is, how much of the staff is funded out of it? So position numbers off the top of my head, it's at least half of our staff. So I would say over 20. However, the way we've allocated it, again, if there's a staff line in that table that you can go look at, it's not gonna have each individual, they're rolled up into a staff line. Every single person that, as of now, that we have hired that is funded under the Climate Protection Fund is assigned to, they are working on a particular allowable use. So the majority of their salary and benefits is allocated to that use. However, we begin the year by allocating 25% of their time or their salary, their total package to administration, which is also an allowable use. We do that to acknowledge that we have staff meetings, there are trainings, there are activities that they might be doing that are not actually delivering the services under that allowable use, and we want to acknowledge that. So their full salary is paid for by the fund, but we allocate it differently.
But to me, I think Councilman's point, a reserve might be something worth considering, because that, when with economic conditions, with, for some reason, when you're, and the way that, nonprofits look at it, right? We try to have best practices 50% of our operating revenue. I'm not telling you that that's what you should do, but it's 50% of our, because, if like next year with office buildings, how many members am I gonna lose because they're trying to cut expenses, when, our dues are not even a penny a square foot, so, but they're cutting everywhere they can, so that we know we have money. And then we also have our investment
Yeah.
part for strategic initiatives. So that's where I think for you guys, if you had a reserve, if there was some strategic initiative that came up, there would be a fund that you could potentially pull from. And then what we do is in the policy, you tell how you're gonna pay that back over time. So that might be the only reason why I would say is if there was something strategic that kind of came up that you didn't want to wait on, or the mayor didn't want to wait on, or city council didn't want to wait on to push you guys to do it, you would have that pool of money. That would be the only reason I would say.
That's an interesting idea. I truly had never thought of that. So thank you for bringing that up. Do we have other questions or comments about the report? Any, especially for those of you who had time to look at it ahead of time? What were your thoughts?
Well done.
Thanks.
Very professional.
Oh my
Something
God.
we can be proud of.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think it's great and yeah, excellent. It looks visually great for people who love numbers, great for people who maybe don't as much. Things like that. Just two kind of like to bring it back to the personal level points. The organization that I run did receive one of those 10K grants, and we are working with Cultivando and DDPHE, and also paired that with getting donated $18,000 in legal services to bring community voice to the upcoming GEM 2 rulemaking, where the biggest greenhouse gas polluters have to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and co-pollutants by 20%, the biggest being Suncor. And that's what allowed us to build a coalition of Mountain Mamas, Black Parents United Foundation, Mothers Out Front down in Pueblo, and then our organization to come together and have it's the first time that the lawyer said that they've seen a community voice be elevated to party status like this. And so and then we were able to host a film with Cultivando. We're doing another event pairing with Claudia, talking about the impacts of meat on greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. And it's just a really big thank you because it is making a difference in having things done that have never been done before.
Thank you. That's, again, I love the stories, and I think that's what's so important because the numbers can only tell so much. We need to put more stories like yours in the report, right? And on our website so people can see that. And the cascade that it was, yes, it was $10,000, but look at how much you did with that.
Yeah.
And how much more you're able to bring in.
Totally.
Thank you for sharing that.
And thank you for that opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Great. Other comments, and do we have anything online? Anything we need to read there?
Yeah, some yays, some
Yeah.
great work.
I know the heat map has been a really great resource for people. And I like just the visual aspect of like, here's the outputs, but here's the outcomes. We think about like reductions in emissions, but also like how it's impacting people's lives. And I think that's helpful to just continue to show the work of the office and the work that the money is doing.
Okay.
I was looking, when I opened it, I am always being asked the question, we're spending 40 million a year. How is our environment doing? And that was your original thing that led into this, the ROI on the dollars being spent. So I didn't find that clear number.
No, you didn't. You didn't. And that is definitely one of the things that I think we're still struggling with. And so it's really, and you're not the first one to tell me that, well, it's the X and the Y, like, how did you get there? And also someone has suggested with or just the person I spoke to recently, that first chart, the bar chart that showed the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Someone suggested that we actually pull it out farther to show our goal at 0 and to see what trajectory we're on and then where do we need to be so that it shows the difference, right? The delta. And so we need to start addressing for people, what are we doing about that delta? How are we getting to that? So yeah, I think that was a helpful commentary.
But it was a great report that you made. I went through it because I was looking for. I'm asked that question.
So you had to go through the whole thing.
It's not
you didn't find it.
not my question, but I feel like I get asked.
Liz, do you think I could ask you to comment on the challenge in quantifying that, right? We've spent X dollars. There's our total greenhouse gas emissions inventory. How do we connect them on a storyline that resonates for people?
So we do have metrics in the report for GHG per dollar spent for all the signature programs in the CPF, so that is in there. So it kind of gives you a relative sense of which programs are the highest impact in terms of reducing GHG. In terms of then taking that and mapping that onto how much are we going to see, like in a waterfall chart, shaved off of our GHG emissions year over year looking ahead. Projections like that can be challenging, but it's certainly something we can do and should do. So I would fully expect to see it in next year's report.
That's an issue. Oops, go ahead. Was there a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, thinking about for next year, because this is fantastic. You know, on some of this mapping, maybe an overlay of nest communities or under-resourced buildings, just for that equity piece.
Yeah, make it really clear.
Okay. Go ahead.
You know what, it's an issue that we have as transportation management associations to represent the emissions reductions. And when we get into this exercise, it's like we always partner, you know, and so if we're doing a transit promotional event with, you know, RTD, who's going to be able to say, I got, you know, 100 new riders, both. And, you know, in part, the way that things trickle up to the rack to account for the emissions reduced in our area has certain agencies able to provide that data. I don't think that we are part of that. Is our data, our reductions and programs funneled up to the RAC?
No, I mean, I'm on in the RAC for everyone listening, that's the Regional Air Quality Council, and I'm on that board, and we just had a meeting on Friday, so I'm familiar with the data. You know, what they actually measure are coming from air monitoring stations.
Okay.
And so what happens in each jurisdiction really doesn't roll up to their data, it's actual monitors. And of course, they're monitoring for different, different emissions in the air, different types of emissions.
Right.
So yeah, no, the data that we have here from CASR does not roll up to the RAC either, no.
I have one question. Do you try to account for any passive savings that may come through increased marketing and growing service providers from providing so many rebates for new technologies?
That is a good question. I don't know that we, I don't know that we've done that yet. So, but here's, actually, you know what, can you go to the sustainable transportation data? You can just jump. Maybe show us how to jump. Okay. Yeah, if you go to the Power BI, so we're going to the dashboard for sustainable transportation. Working on it. I'm looking at, where's the dollar figure? Your click, can you click anywhere to interact? Because then I think that box will go away. It's funny, we don't actually have it on here. Well, the stat I was thinking of is that the amount of money that we have put into the e-bike voucher program has been doubled by the amount of money that the consumers have to spend on their own. And so if we put not quite doubled, right? So $4.5 million in e-bike rebates into the local economy. The total spend at bike shops is almost $9 million. And so that's definitely, it's an impact, it's an indirect impact on our part. We actually don't have that one here. I don't know that I have that for other programs, right? So I'm looking at Katrina right now, and all the rebates that we provide to buildings for retrofits, we have that money, but how much and I suppose we probably will collect this, but how much then is spent by the building in total? And how much does that support the HVAC trades in doing that work? So that definitely sounds like something that we should be incorporating and measuring. I don't know if that totally gets to your question. That's certainly how I'm answering it, but if you have other ideas on how we can dig deeper, that would be helpful. And we'd be very interested in doing more of that.
So we're having our second Not Easy Being Green series because of what, it energized Denver and of course the state. We're telling our members they need to be documenting everything they do, what they spend, and what is the result on their EUI target with that. Because I think that's going to be important, because as we talked that in 2026, we want to look at what reality was versus what the goals were. And where are we, right? Are we there? Are we over? Are we not? And so why? And I feel like that as our members kind of go down that path in order to show you guys what they've done, that data is important, and so hopefully we can get at least some anecdotal information from things like that if we, especially if they have to file for, I think, alternative pathway or something, right? They're gonna have all that data that you guys can then see, you know, what's gone into, because any money spent at is gonna go into the trades at some point when they spent at the building.
Right.
Right, so there's what they spent now to bring the trades in to do the work that is gonna result in the reduction of the DUI, right?
Right.
So hopefully that'll be some more data.
Great. Other comments or thoughts about the report? Anything else online?
What is the, like, you promote on social media, how else is it getting out there and how can we be helpful? Making sure people are seeing those.
I think it was entirely social media. We didn't do a press release. It was also, our release date is almost always going to be June 30th or close to it, depends on what day it falls, because that's our deadline. And so that's right before the holiday. Not, it's slow news day, so maybe we could do a press release.
This is trash though.
We actually did reach out to some reporters, but reporters are pretty savvy. They don't find a lot of interest in reports. So I think it has been almost entirely social media and then our own email networks.
I just wondered too, with the new administration coming in and someone sitting on the transition team, if there's an opportunity to maybe show this to the folks on the CASER transition team or to the new administration themselves to have, I don't know if that's in the works already and that's good thing.
Well, I definitely shared it with Mayor-elect Johnson the day that we published it. We also had our first briefing with him a week ago Thursday. And so we were able to tell him about it. We didn't have that much time with him to really go through that. Naomi is on the transition committee, and Anna, that's right, you're both on it. Do you want to tell? Oh, I forgot about that. That's great. We have excellent representation of SAC members on a number of committees. Do you want to tell us if it came up or were people aware of it in the forum the other day or other folks on the?
Well, I don't know if it came up in the forum, but it went around by email to all the transition team members.
Great.
I do think we should bump it up though, because I'm thinking about our last call and I think the adaptation resiliency section would be something that we could pull from. And on that note, actually, I guess I have a question for y'all, which is in any of these realms, are there things that you're like, yes, this has been going really well, or like isn't quite what we expected, and so here's what we would like to see the administration focusing on, because I think that's something that could help inform some of those conversations.
I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that right now, but certainly I think we look forward to engaging the new administration and finding out, exactly what does the mayor-elect want his, signature to be on climate. And I think we heard through the campaign, he seems to be very in favor of so much of the work that we do. And we look forward to making sure he knows all about everything else.
I think as far as getting the word out about this as well, all of the recipients, the organizations that have received grants, they need to have this too.
Absolutely.
As they get media inquiries or as they're putting out their annual reports, linking or
That's
referencing
smart.
this would be good.
Okay, I don't think I thought, I know I didn't think of that. So good point. Taylor has a hand up online.
Hi, everyone. Really great presentation, Grace. I just think this is so sharp and approachable for all sorts of different audiences. Just one question about, I see there's so many dashboards in here, but this is also a report. So are these static pieces of information, or do these update based on some regular inputs?
No, that's an excellent question. We are able to update the dashboard. And I think the question for us is, if we do that in real time, does that then become incongruent with the words that are in the report? And so that's something we're thinking about. And so maybe I'll close out this piece with one last question to you, which might not close us out on this piece. One of the things we realized the other day, and I hinted at this earlier, this is it's a look back. Right? It's where were we as of December 31st, but we're issuing it now. And so much more work has been done. Now that we have the control over this report, so we can be changing it right up until the moment we send it. Not that we want to do that, not a best practice, but we had to do a few changes, we could do it. Perhaps we think about making it a real-time report? And so the data that we share would be as of the day that it's published, not the full look back. And so we just have to think about that because we do have the requirement in the ordinance that we share what was the, what were the annual expenditures in the year prior, but can we share more of the stories and update the data in addition to that? So Taylor, that might get more to your point that, you want to see data in real time. You don't want to necessarily see a static look back. So that's something that it's definitely on our minds as well.
Yeah, and I'm involved in, I know how very hard it is to create and then do all the maintenance on something that you make a commitment to a real-time updates, but reports are great, but they sort of live and die in their relevance, getting the information and then just the timeliness of it all. But I think that it's really great that it seems to be set up for possibly a transition in that direction.
Yeah. Great. Any other comments that we need to take from the chat? Anyone else in the room? All right, well, thank you for all of that. And then I believe that brings us to the last item on our agenda, which is to talk about your welcome letters. And so maybe if you don't mind, I'm going to start with the folks in the room where I'm interested to hear, did your committee decide to write one? What's your status? Like, how close is it to being done? And it is now, what day is this? July 12th. Do you think they could be done by the end of the month? Those are my major questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start over here. Again, sorry, Stephen, you're right in my line of sight.
So I was not at our meeting prior to the one yesterday, so.
We don't have one.
Okay.
So
So no
this
for
is the
buildings
first
and
I've heard of the welcome letter.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. That's fine. And it was not a requirement. It was an invitation. If you wanted to, the idea behind a welcome letter, it was an invitation to the committees. If you wanted to present your list of ideas and thoughts to the new administration, then we would package them up as a greeting from the SAC, not a requirement.
I think I mentioned it in the main meeting, which was the one that
But I missed.
missed and. Really, it was simply.
Because I missed the last SAT meeting too.
I was basically like, I don't know, maybe.
Okay. That's fine.
Aaron and I will discuss and let you know.
Yeah,
And that's okay.
apologies for not re-asking just the two.
Okay. So energy.
Yep, we, I mean, Darren, jump in here, but ours is, I think, close to done. We have a meeting tomorrow where we're gonna finalize it as a committee. It's pretty high level, and so that is kind of where the group landed, I think, as far as interest in it. So I'm kind of wondering if folks are gonna do this, how granular are you going to be? Because I think we could use some time in our meeting tomorrow to kind of step it up a little bit and have some more specific asks. But it's mostly kind of a follow-up on ongoing projects that we want to continue to see investment in.
Okay, that sounds great. And when we make this packet for him, it will also include, I will have a summary of all the recommendations that SEC has already worked on.
Oh, that's good.
So, yeah, so that your piece here will be all a continuation, right? So you get to say, here's what we've supported before, here's where we'd like to see you looking ahead. I'm gonna go to Harmony next.
We did work on a letter. Our next meeting isn't until the 26th, but we do believe that we'll be putting the finishing touches on it, and that is our goal for the next meeting. The main points, and we're the Environmental Justice Committee, so one of our biggest things is we would like to see environmental justice staff. We think that that's really important for the climate office and the success of EJ work, and especially with 50% of the climate protection funds supposed to go back to communities of color and those most vulnerable to community, that there really needs to be more focused energy on there. Then also, we want to request a meeting in person, possibly in one of our nest neighborhoods. So it's different when you see, smell, taste, and feel it when you're in community. And I know for a lot of folks in Denver, including myself, I didn't know what North Denver was like until like 3 years ago. And so I think that that's really important for the new mayor coming in as well. And then our final thing is to layer on and build up on the foundation of the great work of the climate office and city council, who have adopted the default food-based options at menus and at their meetings, which means that if you have a buffet, the first options are vegetarian-based. And if you have a menu where you select from, a meat option is further down. They find significantly less meat gets eaten, and that's less water, less greenhouse gases, less waste, like the whole of things, better health, all sorts of things. And so CASR's done that great job. City council has picked that up. And we just think that that's a really natural next step for citywide. It doesn't cost additional money. It doesn't really need additional staff, and would be something really approachable that could put Denver on a map. And thank you for getting that started. Great. And following up.
Thank you.
We have one. It's going through a process of being reduced. We're discussing it on Friday, and the wonderful author is my colleague Naomi, so I'm passing it to her.
And see, when you say reduced, when you start, is this a dissertation?
No, it is not. I am just the convener of people and been soliciting feedback, but we did include our recommendations, a summary of it and the current status, so we can pull that out. I can share with you. But similar to Anne's point, it's like high level, but we do have a series of asks, but our goal is to finalize. We also asked for a meeting. I love the idea of doing a community. We talked about maybe doing like biking, walking, something interactive. But to Stuart's point, our hope is to finalize in our Friday meeting if we have consensus around what are the key things we want to see. But also our goal is to have it in more than 2 pages, front to back.
Okay. And I think Taylor might be the only other person online whose committee hasn't spoken.
Yeah, so we started actually several months ago. We created a draft, and we had some staff transitions with our team. There's obviously the mayoral transition. So in that time, we've been doing some other work / a little bit of work planning, a little bit of dreaming up what we'd like to do next / getting to know new staff and understanding some of the foundational policy and other structural things that would be helpful for supporting zero waste work long term. We're going to be meeting next on July 28th. So I think the end of the month would be a little tough because the end of the month would be that next Monday. We'd need maybe a few more days to just synthesize all the feedback we get and finalize it.
Okay, we can work that out. Thank you, Taylor. And I was wrong. Marianne is here from Adaptation and Resiliency.
Hi, everyone. I didn't have a Zoom link, so I'm sorry that I joined a little late, but for everyone who doesn't know me, I'm Marianne Eppig. I'm the Director of Resilience with the Urban Land Institute. And even though ULI is a global nonprofit, I'm based out of Colorado, so I'm here. The Adaptation and Resiliency Committee is also in the process of strategic planning, so our next meeting will really focus on thinking ahead in terms of what we want to be focusing on for the next year. We just finished 2 recommendations that were approved by this committee. Thank you for the approvals. And we also have been bringing in expert presenters to our past few meetings. So we're going to be thinking through next steps on several recommendations, especially related to biodiversity and maybe pesticides and things like that. So yeah, we're excited. We think that there's a lot of opportunity going forward, and feel free to reach out anytime if you have questions.
Great, thanks so much. And I should add, since we are in league with you on requesting a meeting. So we have suggested that the mayor meet with the SAC within the first 100 days.
Great.
So we'll certainly continue working on that. And I look forward to seeing all your letters. And again, no pressure for those who are not working on it. And for those, I did not give you a format on purpose. This is your document. And I think no matter what, he's really interested in our work. And I think he's really interested in hearing from you. So.
Will you have regular time with the mayor?
That is, that remains to be seen. So after I joined the city, the Mayor Hancock did have monthly meetings with every agency head. So I did have that, but the new mayor, you never know how they're going to operate. So maybe, I think, and who knows, maybe he'll want weeklies. I should say also, under the Hancock administration, we had all appointee calls every Monday at 8 a.m. Now it's kind of a round robin, right? We didn't have a lot of time to speak, but you might give like 90-second update of like, here's what's it's the week ahead is what that is. So we at least keep each other up to date, and it's really good to hear, what the other agencies have to say. But again, you never know how new leadership is going to approach their organization, but certainly, no matter what, I'm sure I will have contact with the new mayor. All right, well, that concludes all the items that I had on the agenda. But we do still have some time left to enjoy each other's company or hear announcements. Did anybody come with announcements or anything else you would like to discuss? And that includes our folks online in the chat. Yes, Stephen.
I have some incredible news from the BOMA front.
Okay.
A program that has been in BOMA Canada for, well, at least since before 2013. I don't remember when it kind of came around. It's called BOMA Best. It is truly around sustainable buildings, smart buildings, and healthy buildings. And the way that the platform is set up, it's a great working dashboard for building managers to constantly be tracking what's going on with their property. Hopefully, you know, they've done a building retuning and have it working as efficiently as possible and can kind of track all of that. And it is a recognition program, I'll say similar to LEED, but a lot less expensive. And so I think it's going to be a great way for a lot of building owners to not only show their commitment to the sustainable building, but also it's going to be a great tool for them to manage those buildings in a sustainable way. And so that was just launched in the US. And so we'll be pushing that. Ideally, it would be great to, you know, start figuring out once we kind of understand what it is. My plan is to get Katrina pulled in so she understands what the program is, because it'd be great that, you know, if the building has that, could there be something that gives them credit in some way? Other places have done that. So I'm excited that that's going to be a really cool way to kind of push that out to the community or statewide. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. I see Theron has his hand up.
Yeah, I just heard some bad news. I think it was this morning, it might have been yesterday morning, that Denver Food Rescue had several of their bikes stolen out of a locker overnight.
Oh, no.
And they're asking people to look out for new bikes. But I think it's something for us to consider too, is like what these types of situations is a way for us to help out organizations like this.
Yeah, it was a real shame. We heard about that as well. And these are the e-cargo bikes that were funded by the Climate Protection Fund. So it's an absolute shame. And I always was so overjoyed when I would see them biking around town, making their deliveries and doing pickups. So we're talking with them actively on.
Where's their building? I apologize.
York, 38th.
It was in a lock trailer. Or inside a trailer.
There's some things that are going on right now with public safety. There's funding to help. You can do like a public safety assessment of a property, and so based on that, you can get some grant funds from ARP. Is it ARP? That we're to help put in cameras and stuff. So maybe they need something like that. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
Well, the same when we got our charging stations installed, with the cables were sized, you know, like. You know, so you spend all this money and time to get it installed. I mean, in this case, their operations up and running, ours wasn't up and running, so I guess the impact was a little smaller. That's, you know, just those replacement things, and I think it's also a conversation I know I'm having at state level on EV charging stations. We have funding available to help you build a new one, but there's no funding to keep them maintained. So we have aging, it's hard to believe for those of us who aren't EV drivers, but we have EV charging stations that are old and, you know, don't work so well and need to be replaced because they've been sitting in the weather for 8 years already, or 5 years. And so for us to have a little bit of a strategy on how do we maintain things like.
We've talked about it in our committee too, is that a potential use of the climate funds for maintaining, but also like, when there's something's vandalized and it's like a nonprofit or a community-based business that doesn't maybe have the means, or it just might take too long to repair. So that's something we've been chatting on.
I have some good news to report. Our building that we own in Sun Valley, it's a warehouse that houses 3 nonprofits, Mile High Youth Corps, Energy Resource Center, and Blue Star Recyclers. We had an event, 2 weeks ago, Liz was there. So this is one of the first projects in the RRIP program, solar array, 100% of the building, electrical use will be offset by this array that's funded by the RRIP program. That happened a few weeks ago. I just got the email yesterday or the day before that Excel finally is ready to interconnect it, so we can flip the thing on. It's been done for a while. So that's awesome. We actually start producing electricity there. Those programs can put more of their dollars into services. The other thing is that through a lot of the work that we've been doing, a good majority of it funded through city programs or Energy Outreach Colorado or Excel Energy. We did roof insulation when we did the new roof. We've done lighting retrofit throughout, a couple other things, but this warehouse building that was built in the late 70s, 40,000 square feet. We're ready to be Energy Star certified for that building, which is, I mean, it's just a tilt-up concrete building that's nothing special, but through putting a lot of these things together, has really made something cool out of it. So, yeah, so exciting stuff happening there.
Thank you for that. We're very excited for your building to become electrified. That's great. Or energized. Yes.
I've called Yvando, the Latino group out of Commerce City, who does the air monitoring and tons of great things in their community, is having their third annual Eco Fiesta on the 22nd. So if anyone wants to grab a flyer, it's a great time to come out in community, have some joy, some music, some food, and learn more about the great things that they're doing. Thank you for that.
I just had one item, hopefully I can get this right. I just heard a presentation from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment about how fines that are levied against these stationary sources can be potentially redirected towards programs run by nonprofits.
Oh.
And it's a very squishy process because they don't know they're gonna get fined, and somehow you have to get to them and say, hey, why don't you do something right here in our neighborhood? And we now have our first example, which is in Golden, where their shuttle is gonna get additional funding from a fine that was levied against them. I just found that very exciting, but it's also an opportunity for us to perhaps leverage or facilitate how these fines can be applied back into the neighborhoods instead of going to the state level.
Cultivando got a big grant from that very good.
From that one?
Yeah, it's this pollution violation escrow program, something like that. But
I think they were calling it an SEP.
Yeah, the SCP.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else in the room? Yes, Liz?
I'm just curious if anybody's going to the inauguration day party in the evening.
Just got my tickets.
Maybe we can all say hi when we're there.
Are you taking your kids?
Yeah.
Having a ruckus, you'll see us.
Great, yeah. Anyone else online? Any comments? All right, well, thank you all very much. Please stay cool, do your best to stay healthy in this heat, and we'll see you again for the next SAC meeting in October. Thanks, everyone.
nice to see you.